What's going on with everybody? Hope you guys are staying safe. Um, Apologize, I haven't been around in a while. Basically, hang on one sec. Okay, we're good. What's up, guys? Starting over just in case there was a delay there. Um, haven't been around in a minute. Had a pretty bad fever. I don't know if it was COVID. Been a little tired and out of it. Have been getting some work done from the house, and I had some people request some issues for us to talk about. And today we're going to talk about talking to the police and whether or not that is a smart move or a great mistake. And just want to mention a few people before we get going today. April Webb, really glad that Jimmy will be home today. You guys have been in my thoughts. So we were really happy with the result yesterday in Oakland County. That was way too difficult, more difficult than it should have been. I keep stressing we got to work as a team. We shouldn't have to go to war over an issue like that, but I'm glad the result did end up what it was. Jen Kelly, Jenny's out there today. She's been working really hard, and she's been grinding away on things. We both spoke to the blogger today for this article. The article was posted on Facebook, and we're going to talk about that article today because this has been an issue that people keep contacting me over. And the issue, guys, is what do I do if the police want to talk to me? Okay. This is really a question that does not have a set answer. I know a lot of old school lawyers who've taught me things in the defense field will always say that you should always just refuse to talk to the police. Well, let's talk about that because I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy. We're going to start with this. If you're ever in doubt on whether or not you should talk to the police, then just don't talk to them. If you're concerned about an issue, or you're being investigated for something, or a loved one's being investigated, and you don't want to talk to the cops, I want you to say the following: I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and I want my lawyer present. That will invoke both your Fifth and your Sixth Amendment rights. Something that people don't always know is that pre-Miranda silence could actually be used against somebody in court. And that means sometimes not answering a question could be used to prosecute you or a loved one. I want you to jump in there right away. I'm invoking my right to remain silent. I'm invoking my right to counsel. Your Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights are present there. And at that point, you have protection. If you do decide to talk to the police, I'm not always against that. What we're going to do today is talk about how we're going to view this from county to county. Because the way you handle this issue in Wayne County should be different than the way you handle this issue in Washtenaw County. And then sometimes, to get even more specific, depending upon the prosecutor that we're dealing with, you won't always know the answer to that question, but that can alter the way you address this issue. So, with that being said, if the police want to talk to you, let's take a few different counties and situations, and we're going to talk about the RE technique, which is a technique I've mentioned before that the Michigan State Police will use in order to try and get a confession out of somebody. We'll talk a little bit about how polygraphs come into play on this issue, if you should do a polygraph, if you should not do a polygraph, and we'll start with this one, polygraphs. Never do a police polygraph until you have taken a private polygraph. If you take a private polygraph and you do well, and I'll give a shout out to Detective Lunguski on this one, because that's who we use. He ran the Michigan State Polygraph Unit for over 2 decades. If you pass Andy Lunguski polygraph, there's a great chance you'll pass a police polygraph. If you fail the polygraph, nobody knows about it but your lawyer and the polygrapher, and it's privileged. I will say this, and I don't want to get too deep into polygraphs right now, but innocent people do fail polygraphs. There's a lot that goes into it. But guilty people do not pass them. So when you hear things like guilty people, they fake through a polygraph, not true. Unless you are basically schizophrenic and a Mensa member combined into one, even then it would be almost impossible to fake through a polygraph. So let's start at Washtenaw County. If you're in Washtenaw County and the police want to talk to you, if you say no, many of the prosecutors in Washtenaw will automatically charge you because they'll feel like that's an admission of guilt. Now, there's two prosecutors in that office who, I would tell you, if you know those two are on the case, and I'm not going to blast them right now on Facebook Live, but if you know one of these two are on the case, they're going to charge no matter what. I see these two particular prosecutors charge some of the most horrendous things with no evidence. If you're dealing with a prosecutor like that, then just don't even talk to the cops. Let's lawyer up immediately and deal with it. But for the most part, I do think the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office is a pretty intelligent office. We bang heads a lot, obviously. It's my home. But I will say most of them are fair, but there are policies in place where if you don't talk to the police, that could be used against you in a charging decision. Can't be used against you at trial, but it could be used against you in a charging decision. So what do you do in that situation? If the police want to talk to you in Washtenaw, and if it's the MSP, the Michigan State Police, we'll talk more about them in detail later, but if they want to talk to you and the venue is Washtenaw County, what you should do is the following. Well, I'm not going to talk to you without my lawyer present. I didn't commit a crime. I'm invoking my right to remain silent. I'm invoking my right to counsel, but I'll gladly speak to you with my lawyer present. If I'm your lawyer, give them my cell number. I'm sure they got it anyway. But that's one of those situations where you cannot ever talk to the police without a lawyer present. And I'm kind of differing from some other lawyers on this, because I'm not saying to just always tell the police I'm not talking to you. But you should never talk to an officer without your lawyer present. Your lawyer should be there because if things get out of hand, your lawyer should be smart enough to shut it down. And that's that. And if the case goes to trial, and I've won a couple of big trials like this, one of the things I tell the jury is, you know what? My client had nothing to hide. They even went to speak to the police. When a juror hears that the defendant went to talk to the police and they did not make an admission, there's a little light bulb that goes off in their head, and you're thinking, wow, okay, is this guy or girl really guilty? Because if they were, why would they just so willingly go talk to the police? It's a little insurance policy when you're going to trial. It's something you could use at a prelim. And, that's the deal. In Washtenaw County, hey, Nick, don't necessarily agree with that statement, but I hear where you're going. When you are questioned by the police, make sure your lawyer's present. But if you don't talk to the police at all, that could be used against you in a charging decision. So let's make sure we know what we're doing there. A lot of times, guys, criminal law is like real estate. Location, location, location. And you're going to have a different type of prosecutor in Washtenaw than you're going to have in Wayne County. Let's talk about Wayne County. Do a lot of work in Detroit, and I'm just going to tell you this. I don't care what the situation is. In Wayne County, Just don't talk to the cops. That's it. Tell them you have a lawyer. You invoke your right to remain silent. And Nick, I'm going to hold your hand on this one. Nick Sanderson just made a comment in the live. In Wayne County, just STFU. I won't use that language, but you know what I mean. There's nothing you're going to say to a police officer in Detroit that is going to help your case. Um, the cops out there are overworked, and you know, a lot of times they base their cases on confessions. You'd be surprised, but 45% of capital cases, and a capital case is one where somebody's facing life in prison, and we deal with them all the time at our firm. It's the normal to deal with a capital case. That kind of pressure is out the window. We've been doing it forever now. We're almost shocked, and Nick will, my private investigator, will attest to this. I'm shocked and thrilled when a client didn't make a confession before I was involved, because the confession is always going to be a problem in court, whether it's a legit confession or not. In Wayne County, in my belief, the only thing the cops want to do is get a confession. They're not really interested in finding out the truth. I have a case in Wayne where a police officer, I wouldn't let my guy talk to the police. And the police say, well, he made a confession. He didn't even talk to you. How did he make a confession? Well, this guy is going through a divorce. And his wife said that he made a confession. And the police actually put that in their report, that there is a confession, because the wife, who filed for divorce against him and stole money from him, said he made a confession. Think about that. That's terrifying. We've all had relationships that have gone wrong. Imagine an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend says that you said something you didn't, and the police take that as gospel. Wayne County's a tough place. I have a lot of respect for police officers, but I'm going to tell you, in Wayne, talking to the police is nothing but a mistake. In Washtenaw, talking to the police intelligently could be the move. Shiawassee. Okay. Shiawassee County. Judge Stewart is somebody who I respect a great deal. Fair man. And he's the king, because in circuit court, there's only one. And it starts and ends with Matthew Stewart. So I've always said how I respect that jurisdiction so much. Josh Champlain is a great journalist. Chrissy Lab runs a great court. I have zero respect for the sheriff's department there, and I think Brian Bagol is not the type who's looking for the truth. He's the type who's looking for a confession. So as much respect as I have for the court itself, I would advise anybody being questioned by Shiawassee Sheriff Department just keep their mouth shut. You're not going to say something, lawyered up or not, that's going to change that department's opinion of whether or not you committed a crime. The only thing you can do in that situation is basically get yourself into trouble. Just assume that there may be a charge coming your way. Keep your mouth shut, get your lawyer together, and start working on it. Do not talk to that sheriff's department. That will be a grave mistake in Shiawassee. As much respect as I have for the prosecuting office and for the judge, I don't respect that sheriff's department. I've seen too many tricks pulled out there with that particular sheriff, if you would, and I could do nothing but advise you to keep your mouth shut. Invoke your 5th and 6th Amendment rights. Get your lawyer, and then let's go to work. Eaton County. I've learned a lot in Eaton County, work with Nick Sanderson over the last year and a half. And I will say many of their prosecutions are attributed to people making confessions. And sometimes they get multiple confessions before they bring a charge. In that situation, I would advise just not talk to the police. Usually, a confession could be coerced. When we talk about coercion, we're not talking about physical abuse, because we're going to get into the Reed technique in a minute. And the Reed technique is a technique that is used by law enforcement across the country to try to get a confession out of people. So it's been really famous on the West Memphis 3 case. The officers used it against Jesse Miskelly. Jesse was a mentally challenged young man who never hurt a fly, but led to the incarceration of 3 individuals, including himself, because of a confession. A fake confession. A false confession, if you would. The Central Park 5, that's been documented. What happened there with those poor kids. And of course, Brendan Dassey. And I know I'm friends with a lot of Brendan Dassey supporters out there. I really hope the governor in Wisconsin gets off his ass and does the right thing by Brendan. He didn't kill anybody. It's tragic that kid is going through what he's going through. A mentally challenged young man who was the victim of the Reed technique. Let's talk about the Reed technique. We're going to go through the 9 steps. And if you're not bored to death after that, we'll talk a little bit about polygraphs, and then we'll call it a day. The Reed technique is something I see frequently utilized by the Michigan State Police. And I'm going to talk about a case that I have. We won't mention names, obviously, but we're going to talk about this case, and we'll give you some vague facts on it. And I'll explain what the trooper did and explain how the 9 steps come into play. My client, accused of a CSC from a long time ago. And the first thing he wanted to do when the Michigan State Trooper called him was go talk to the police. And he wanted to go talk to the cops because he believed that's the right thing to do. Very religious guy. And he feels, the police are people I respect. I want to talk to the cops and express my innocence. Well, he went to talk to the police with me. The Washenal case. So I knew if he didn't, there'd be no chance of him not having a warrant issued with the prosecuting team that was involved at the time. He goes to talk to the police, and he makes no admissions. Offered to take a polygraph. 3 days later, the police requested a warrant. Now, I want you to think about that. If he went to talk to the cops and he made no admissions, and 3 days later the officer requested a warrant without even giving him an opportunity to take a polygraph. He had passed a private polygraph, by the way, but we'll come back to that later. What's that tell you? Well, it tells you the officer was going to request a warrant no matter what. This particular trooper did not care what my client had to say. The only thing this individual was trying to do was to get a confession out of my client, which he didn't give. And if and when this case goes to trial, one of the first things I'm going to be telling the jury is, you know what? We went in, we answered the questions, and they requested a warrant 3 days later with no admissions. This was nothing more than a fishing expedition to try to get my client into a compromising situation. And one of the things the trooper did in this case was asked my client, do you feel bad for what happened? And right there, I'm jumping in. I'm like, first of all, he didn't do anything, but he feels bad for anybody going through what these allegations would be, but it's not attributable to him. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. The trooper asked my client, do you feel bad for what happened? If he just says yes, of course I feel bad for her. What are they going to make that into? They're going to try and twist that in a confession.
It's 16 hours.
So now, by me intercepting that, he's cooperating, but he's also protecting himself. If the lawyer's asleep at the wheel right there, or if the defendant goes in alone, and the trooper asks you, do you feel bad? And you say yes, you feel bad about anything. I feel bad this individual made up this allegation. I feel bad this person has mental issues, that they're making a false allegation. To just say you feel bad could be taken as a confession, and right there, you could be facing life in prison. That's how quick your freedom could be destroyed. That's scary, guys. So what's the first step? Well, the first thing in the read technique is the trooper is going to have direct confrontation. They're going to come at you and say, look, we have evidence in hand. We know what happened. Now, a weak-minded individual or a scared person could fold right there. You know, the lawyer should shield them from that question, but it's going to be direct confrontation. From that point, the trooper, step 2, will be offering the defendant a chance to explain why it took place. In our case, the trooper said to the defendant, listen, the victim has no problem with you. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Why don't you tell me what happened, and I'll put that in my report. Now, if you get seduced by that, you could easily lead yourself into a dangerous situation. Because in the layperson's mind, oh wow, the cop doesn't necessarily think I'm guilty. They're giving me a chance to explain. As you are trying to explain, the video is rolling. And what that trooper is going to do is go review that. They're going to take notes, review the video, and try to present something to the prosecution, which is basically going to try to twist something into a confession. So when they offer you that early opportunity to explain, your answer's got to be like, well, listen, I'm not trying to be a smartass here, but there's nothing to explain. I didn't commit any crime. I came in to cooperate, but there's nothing to explain. That's the way you got to answer that. You don't think to yourself, oh, wow, maybe this is misconstrued, so let me try to break it down. Every time you provide a long, detailed answer, you're opening yourself up to a potential twist of the facts. You can't do that. Step 3, which is classic, is they're going to try to shift the blame to somebody else. Hey, listen, let's call them A and B. Listen, A, I know this is not your fault. I bet B was coming on to you. Tell us about the relationship. Again, it's trying to twist and turn into a confession. With Jesse Miskelly in the West Memphis 3, this was the step that really led to all the HBO documentaries and led to Alfred Pleas in West Memphis, Arkansas, and it led to 3 innocent young men going down. Because the officer said to Jesse Miskelly, we know Damian Eccles is the problem. We know Jason Baldwin, he's got issues. We know you were just there and you're really not who we're looking for, but we need to explain. So it was really their fault, wasn't it? Well, after 3 hours of this without his lawyer present, okay, if I tell the cop what they want to hear, maybe they'll let me go to hell home. That's what step 3 is all about. You know, the next step is the cops are going to try to minimize the denials. So the defendant tells the trooper, I didn't do it. And the trooper could say something like this: well, maybe you didn't do what they're saying, but why don't you just tell us what you did do? So let's try to clear this up. There's no trying to clear anything up. This is an attempt at a confession. Your world is on the line right now, guys. You want your lawyer there to protect you, to cover you. You know, and in certain counties we talked about, don't even go in. You want to charge me? Charge me. Let's just go to court. But I would be really careful giving an opportunity to the police without counsel present to protect you. Because when the cop is trying to minimize your denial, they're kind of playing with you emotionally. You know, and sometimes with step 4, you're going to see different situations, and there's tells. When I say there's tells, like if you're playing poker, guy has a tell. If he touches his ear, maybe he's got a high pair. You know, it's something you need to look for. There's going to be one trooper in the room. And you're saying to yourself, okay, well, it's just one cop. They're cool to me. They're being friendly. There's usually 3 or 4 behind curtain number 2 that you don't see. So with somebody who has very limited experience in the criminal justice system, the 35-year-old individual who's ever been charged with a crime, Michigan State Police will potentially put one person in that room and be recording behind the curtain. Sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't. The lawyers should say at the beginning, just want to make sure this is being recorded. Cool. Because now you gotta know, hey, I'm on stage. And they're doing nothing more than trying to get a confession out of me. I'm basically auditioning for the jury right now. I'm showing the jury I've got nothing to hide, and I'm standing my ground, and I'm not coming off angry. When it's somebody who's more seasoned, like somebody with a criminal record, you might have 2 troopers at the interrogation as opposed to 1. There's always going to be some behind curtain number 2, behind that black box, if you would, recording. But when it's 1 as opposed to 2 troopers, a lot of it has to do with the criminal record of the defendant. If the Michigan State Police feel that there's somebody who's seasoned in the criminal justice system, they might put 2 right at the front. If it's somebody who has no prior history, it's usually going to be 1, with hidden ones behind the second door. Step 4 all plays into strategy right there. Step 5. At this point, the accused will give a reason why he or she did not commit the crime or could not commit the crime. What's happening there is the trooper is trying to see your defense laid out. You know, the only defense we want to give them is, hey, here's the defense. We didn't do it. And if you're going to keep asking the same questions, we'll leave, but we are here to cooperate. You keep saying that. We're here to cooperate. I'm here with my client on a Saturday morning, hypothetically, and I drove out in the snow to meet with you because this innocent man wants to meet with you. You know, when they're giving a reason why you could not have committed the crime, when that issue comes up, tell us why you didn't do it, because I'm not a criminal. Next question. Do not get into talking too much. Step 6 is they're going to try to move the acknowledgement of what you did. Okay, listen, we know you did this, but maybe things are misconstrued. So just tell us something must have happened, right? What motive would this individual have to lie? Well, it's a lot of motives: revenge, civil litigation, somebody put them up to it, somebody has mental incapacity and they think something happened. There's a lot of reasons why an alleged victim could lie about being a victim of a crime. Sometimes they want the notoriety. There's a multitude, and that's a topic for another time. But when the officer tries to acknowledge what they want to do, and they usually ask a question like this, let's just call her B in this situation. B speaks highly of you, and B is a good person. B's never been in the criminal justice system, so we don't know why B would lie. So just tell us what we're missing here. Now, do you see how that could be a false sense of security for you? They're not there to find the truth. They're there to get a confession. You have to understand that, guys. You feel bad for that victim. Say it was an ex-girlfriend or something like that. Like, B's had a lot of issues. Maybe she misconstrued something. Right there. You're setting yourself up to go to the Michigan Department of Corrections. The devil's in the details. Step 7. Reinforce sincerity. Depending how the interview is going, this is when the officers are really going to make a push. They're trying to play with the emotional heartstrings here. We believe you. We know you didn't do this, but we got to fill out a report. What can you tell us? We're on your side, and our job isn't to get a conviction. Our job is to find the truth. Had a case in a rural area, just call it that. I won't put the name out there. And this one police officer, if you want to call him that, he always tells this to defendants: I rather see 10 guilty people free than one innocent person convicted. And I believe you're innocent, but I gotta fill this report and I'm just confused. Help me. I can't tell you how many times that line has led people into horrible deception. I'd rather see 10 guilty people free than one innocent person convicted. That is his go-to line. Last time I was in an interview with him, and I went to an interview with him, because the prosecutor in that jurisdiction, who I have a great deal of respect for, but I know the way she works, if we don't go in for the interview at all, it's going to make her charge quicker. That's her office policy. I literally said to him as we were going through it, I said, where's the 10 and 1 deal? He goes, what do you mean? Well, isn't this what you're about to say? I mean, I've heard you say this before. I'd rather see 10 guilty people free than one innocent person convicted. You didn't say that yet. And his whole interview was thrown off. It was like, what the hell did Amadeo just say here? Well, I mean, that's what step 7's all about. Reinforce sincerity. If you don't know better and you hear a cop say that, think about it. 10 guilty people are free. It's so much better than one innocent person doing time. Sounds like a good person. Sounds like somebody who's cared about the justice system. The reality is he's just caring about his conviction rate. So step 7 is that dangerous slippery slide there when the officer tries to reinforce sincerity. It's a mind game. Don't fall into that trap. Step 8, lead the suspect to repeat the admission of guilt. Okay, this is when they think they have something. And you may have said something once, like, yeah, I feel bad for her. Okay, so tell me why you feel bad for her. Tell us exactly, specifically what was going on when it happened. I just need to make a report. You know, what's happening here is sometimes with one confession, a good lawyer could twist and turn that. When you confess twice, it becomes more difficult. When you confess a third time, it becomes more and more difficult. What's happening right now is the trooper is trying to audition to make their warrant request stronger. That's what's happening there. Okay, so repetition, repetition, repetition. You see the same question being asked over and over again, and you need to be really concerned at that point. You know, I will tell you many of our cases, and Nick Sanderson could attest to this, and Jenny Kelly and Matt McManus, they'll all tell you the same thing. About 50%, there's at least one confession in there. We're working from a situation to chop away at that confession. When we get a case where there's no confession, I mean, we're like popping champagne. Like, all right, this is so much easier right now. You mean the individual did not make a confession? Great. I expect somebody when they meet with me and retain me to tell me that they've made at least one confession. And what I need to know is tell me the circumstances. What this video is all about, guys, is free advice. I'm telling you, before you would need me or Nick Sanderson, this is what you have to do to cover yourself. Washtenaw County, cool. Go talk to the police, but have your lawyer with you. Wayne County, don't do anything. I'm not talking to you. You know, a 40-minute drive makes all the difference in the world. Step 9, the officer will document the admission or the confession if they got one. And that's going to be like the cherry on the sundae, if you would. That's where we're at. Now, what about polygraphs? A polygraph is a situation which will be topic of another video. All right, we'll break that apart A to Z. What I'm going to say is this right now. Never, ever take a police polygraph without doing a good private polygraph first. Contact Lunguski, do one with him. It's all confidential. You pass it, cool. You show it to the prosecutor, you hand it in, and you say, here's a copy for you. They just passed an Andrew Lunguski polygraph, and they want to take a police polygraph. In a county like Washtenaw, that will mean a lot. So far, knock on wood, I haven't had people charged in Washtenaw that pass police polygraphs. It's always a first, and if it happens, hey, they want a war, give them a war, right? But usually Washtenaw will be like, okay, this individual passed a polygraph. That's got to count for something. What's the point of having a polygraph unit if we don't care about the results of it? In a place like Wayne, you know, go back to Eric Coleman's case and several others. Yeah, I like the pass polygraph if you could get one, because I'll use it for sentencing purposes if I make a plea. I'll use it in pre-trial to try to shake things up. but that prosecuting office doesn't really care about polygraphs. It's probably a Kim Worthy thing. I don't really know Kim that well. We don't get along, but I'm not going to bash her. I'm just going to tell you her policies are different than a lot of other counties. And if you have a situation like that where the prosecuting office won't care if you pass the polygraph, why even do it? So the polygraph, what usually happens, and there's others that could speak more intelligently on this than me, but I could tell you, I have a lot of experience with it. You're talking about a 3 to 5 hour pre-interview, and the pre-interview is completely admissible. If you make a confession before you actually strap on the polygraph machine, that could be used against you. So you have a client that's vulnerable. You can't be in the room when they take the polygraph. Think about that. There's no right to counsel inside the polygraph test. You can wait outside. I always do. I'll be there. I let the officer know, hey, I'm here. If my client wants to shut it down, they could text me or call me. I'll be here doing work. But I can't go in the room. So you are exposing your client to 4 hours of questioning without you. And that's why the private poly is so essential. You need that. And we're not, that's not the purpose of this video per se, but it's something that kind of tags into it. It tag along because with interrogations, if we're looking for the truth, well, the polygraph should play a role in that. So what do we get today? If the police want to question you, you invoke your right to remain silent. You invoke your right to counsel. Deny the allegation. Officer, I have never committed a crime. Or if you have committed a crime, I didn't commit this crime. I want to invoke my right to silence, and I want my lawyer present. Right there, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment rights. There's level of protection. In certain counties, talking to the police could be beneficial if your lawyer is with you. Because sometimes a very fair prosecutor will look at that and say, well, they went in and talked to the police. They made no admissions. Maybe they got to pass polygraph. This could be a difficult case. And if I'm hesitant that I don't even have a probable cause, it's going to be very difficult to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. All they need for a warrant is probable cause, which is not a hell of a high standard. So you got to be careful. I could tell you specifics on prosecutors. The way a case is viewed in Lenawee is different from the way a case is viewed in Livingston or Oakland or Washtenaw or Eaton. We practicing about 11 different counties right now, and I will tell you, every county is like a different universe. What is viewed in one county as important could be irrelevant in another county. But that's where we're at right now. Okay, guys, stay safe. This COVID thing's still going on. Hope we get through this. I know things will be back to normal in time. Let's stay together. Take care.